of the original, gig industries. I used to temp. I worked between jobs as an independent consultant. And then obviously now I've utilized it to replace working for other people by running my own business. So there are lots of ways to think about self-employment, but generally speaking, if you're being paid by the hour, the project, assignment, piece, engagement, you are probably falling into one form or another of self-employment. We utilize a lot of terms: freelancing, independent contracting, consulting, gigging. Oftentimes they're used interchangeably. You can probably find standardization attempts in defining these things more clearly, but they really are used, interchangeably. And then the other side of that, I think somebody's still not muted, Ken. You can also run a business, right? So there's a difference between just being a gig worker and running a business. These things are not mutually exclusive. Pretty much every business is going to charge by the hour, project, assignment, piece, product, unit. But it's not necessarily true that just because you are working for yourself under one of these terms that you are running a small business. A lot of times I work with freelancers or independent contractors, and they're looking to take what they've been doing and ramp it up into an actual business. And they don't realize, some of them, that they're not actually self-employed by the government's definition of what that means, right? So let's just talk about the federal government. The federal government defines self-employment based on who's paying taxes on the income you are earning. So if you are sharing the tax burden with the person you are with the company that you're working for, then you are not self-employed according to the government. You are earning W-2. That means before you start earning a paycheck, you're filling out a W-2 form that's listing your social security number and your preferred exemptions. And each paycheck that you receive, you will get your federal income tax deducted, Social Security, Medicare contributions deducted. And on the back end of that, the company is also contributing to Social Security and Medicare for you. That's the shared tax burden. At the end of the year, you're going to get a W-2 that states how much you made in total, how much was contributed in taxes for you, and the total amount of Social Security and Medicare. On the flip side of that, a W-9 is, you're giving them either your SSN or your EIN, and they're giving you as a paycheck your gross amount in pay. At the end of the year, you're getting a 1099 miscellaneous form, and it's going to say the entirety of the gross pay that they've sent you because they haven't paid any taxes for you. They haven't made any contributions to Social Security and Medicare for you. All of the onus is on you. Any client that you have that pays you $600 or more in the year, not per engagement, not per project, but total for the year, is required to send a 1099. That goes to you, they keep a copy, and a copy goes to the government. So the government knows how much money you're earning beyond that $600 or $599. It's really important for you to pay estimated taxes over the course of the year. Taxes are paid 4 times a year, and as you accrue income throughout the year, the government expects to get about 80% of taxes upfront as you're earning that income, versus in April when you file your tax returns. If you don't pay enough based on how much income you've received, they will assess a penalty in that calculation on your return in April. To many states and organizations, they've enacted legislation that defines self-employment based on who has control over when and where the work gets done. So a lot of folks who do what's traditional freelancing, meaning they go into a company, work at that company as a freelancer, not as an employee, the state governments are trying to protect those workers from being exploited, because many companies were utilizing that to supplement their full-time staff as full-time freelancers. That's no longer allowable in states like New York and California. Not sure which other states have followed suit, but that's also going to be moving through the courts because companies like Uber are fighting these new legislations. But it's important for you to know that a lot of the temp agencies or outsourcing agencies hire you as a W-2 worker. So they are going to be taking out income tax and Social Security and Medicare contributions for you. And you are not able to deduct your expenses outside of what's traditionally W-2 expense deductions. Like if you have to use your car for work, you can deduct mileage and wear and tear on the car. But if you run a business, you can deduct many more things. For general public and employers, self-employment generally is working for either for more than one employer at a time or working for more than one employer over a short period of time. So if you have an engagement for a year, you can probably claim, yeah, I'm working on contract, but I'm working for this company. And your potential new employers may say like, okay, that's not really to them so much self-employment as, oh, I've had 3 different engagements over the course of the year. If you are a 1099 recipient, the government automatically deems you a sole proprietor. You have a sole proprietorship. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to file any paperwork. It doesn't really change anything for you. But I do highly recommend that you get an employer identification number, which is what EIN stands for, from the IRS, so that when you are submitting your paperwork to your clients, you are not sharing your Social Security number with them. If you have a bunch of different clients like I do, I don't want all of these different folks to have my SSN. They then have to protect that information. And, you know, especially for my small business clients, I don't think that their security is probably as great as some of the larger corporations I've worked with over the course of my career. So it's free to get an EIN. It's really easy. It takes no time. You fill out the form online. This is a link to the information on the IRS site. You fill out the application and pretty much within a very short period of time, you'll get an email with your EIN number. There are different forms of companies, legal structures for your business. I'm not going to go real deep into that. I'm happy to answer questions about it. LLC, LLP, S Corp, and corporations. All of that stuff is filed with the state governments. It requires fees, forms, other documentation. So only the sole proprietorship is something that you sort of can do without filing any paperwork with anybody. The structure of your business determines who and how taxes are paid. If you're an LLC or an LLP or a sole proprietorship, all of the taxes are paid by you as an individual or the owners as an individual, as individuals. They're called pass-through entities. And that means that you are not an employee of your company, your LLC or LLP. You are an equity holder. So you either own, you know, I'm an equity holder of my company. I don't share that with anybody. So I own 100% of the equity. Corporations, however, even if you are the founder of that corporation, you're the CEO, you are an employee, you have to be paid a salary, and the company pays taxes. They pay payroll taxes for that, and they have to file tax forms. They are separate entities from you as an individual, and you pay your own income taxes. From the liability standpoint, kind of what personal liability means is, you know, if somebody sues you, do they have access to your personal assets in the course of seeking compensation? If you're a sole proprietorship, you have no protection. All of your personal assets are up for grabs if you are sued. That is one reason why you should definitely have insurance, regardless of your business structure, but everything is up for grabs. If you're an LLC or LLP, you definitely have a barrier between your personal assets and your business assets, but it's very easy to poke holes in that. because oftentimes, particularly with LLCs, folks will charge something for their business on their personal card. They sort of intermingle their expenses. They're not very rigorous about keeping their business expenses and finances separate from their personal. And that when it starts to leak into your personal and you have that intermingling, then it's easy for lawyers to claim that there really isn't a separation between your LLC and your personal, and your personal assets can then be threatened. If you're a corporation, that's the highest amount of separation between personal and business assets. And if you are sued as a corporation, then only the assets owned by the corporation are up for grabs. And what you own as a person, as an individual, that's all protected. That cannot be accessed. If you are a business owner, or you're thinking about being a business owner and you're not sure which structure that you should be pursuing, it's important to talk to not just an accountant about the tax implications, but to talk to a small business lawyer about all the legal implications and all the forms and different types of documents that you have to submit to the government in order to maintain your status. I'm not going to talk about all of these because I think like you guys can figure out a lot of these. I want to talk about demonstrating entrepreneurship. This has been really valuable to me. I used to have a part of my practice that was working with professionals in career transition, and I created a program for them. And so I'm used to looking at job descriptions, and I still am in the habit of kind of just like nosing around job boards. And I see entrepreneurship as something that's crept in more and more to a lot more job descriptions than just like startups and agencies and things like that, because the qualities that you hone as an entrepreneur when you work for yourself are valuable across the board at an employer in staff positions. You have to sell ideas internally. So even if you're not in sales, even if you're not going out and meeting clients, even if you're not in business development, there are valuable assets that you are honing that are going to be appreciated to internal teams. Just the fact that you have kind of drive and get up and go, that you can convince other people to trust you and do business with you, that speaks volumes. And that's a way of qualifying yourself for a lot of different types of positions. It broadens your exposure, not just in meeting more people and having them experience your amazing skills and talents, but it broadens your exposure to new industries, new potential job applications for your skills, and employment. So there's no kind of downside in terms of that. You get to test drive companies. So I told you when I lost my job in 2008, I started freelancing. I got a freelance job, an engagement for 6 weeks that became a 6-month engagement. They offered me to come on board as a full-time staff member 3 times during my 6 months there. I knew from the day I walked in for the interview, this was not a company I wanted to work for as an employee. Like, just, it was not the right vibe for me. It was not the right, just the open setting, the way that it was, you know, I loved I loved the work I did there. I loved the team I worked with, but I really didn't like the leadership, and I didn't like that atmosphere created. And so every time they offered me a job, I was like, you know, that little bit of, oh, should I do it? And then like, no, my instinct was, this is not the right match for me. So you get to test drive a company and see, is this really the right place for me? And sometimes even just offering to work freelance or work as an independent contractor for 3 months or something, test drive me, I'll test drive you, and we'll see if it's a good match. It eliminates the risk for the company in investing in onboarding a new hire who they don't know, and they don't know if you're going to work out. That's happened to me before as well. And then you get to refine your wish list. One of the things when I worked with professionals in transition that I found was, you know, people were thinking about jobs as, you know, these like static things, like here's the job I want, or here's the company I'm looking for. They didn't really think about like, well, what's the value system? What are, you know, you maybe have like a list of benefits you want, but what are all these sort of soft components of the job that are actually really important to you? You know, just like I said with the job I got offered, it's not the right environment. They were not truly collaborative. It wasn't like a fun place to work. I did not feel like people walked in the door and were happy to be there. That's important to me in any company. I work with a lot of consulting firms, and I know the ones that I would, you know, if I'm looking for a job, like if I close down my company and start to think I want a full-time job, these are the three, right, that I want, because they have the atmosphere and the environment that's going to make me happy to go to work every day, happy to show up with my best self, right? So that wish list is actually really important. In order to be successful, obviously you need to be flexible. Things are going to change. We're living you need to be flexible no matter what you're doing in this day and age. But some of the key things I really want to focus in on networking chops. When I say you need some networking chops, I do not mean you need to know how to work a room. You need to know how to be a schmoozer. I mean, you need to understand how to manage your own network and leverage it to benefit you and to benefit your network. I know there's a famous research a gentleman who basically said, I think we can only manage about 190 some odd connections at one time successfully. So I don't know if you're like me. My LinkedIn is like 500 plus people. I don't even know how many people are in my LinkedIn. But what I did do a few years ago was I downloaded my LinkedIn and I identified how I knew every single person in my LinkedIn. If I couldn't figure out or remember how I knew somebody, and it was like, oh, this was just somebody that randomly invited me to connect, I actually un-LinkedIn with them, because that person was not going to be a valuable connection for me. There's no value if I send them a message and they're like, I don't know who this person really is. I know they're in my LinkedIn, but you know, there's actually no relationship. And as I began to develop my LinkedIn beyond that point, I really was selective about who I let into my network. And I invited the people who I felt were going to be really good partners for me, or that, you know, we had some synergy between what I do and what they do. Like, let's have 15, 20 minutes on Zoom or on wherever on a phone call to understand what each other does and how we might be able to support each other. That's been a really successful strategy for me, but it also means it takes my time. It takes time away from managing the network I already have established and the relationships I already have established. So that's why I'm a gatekeeper for my own network. And it's a very active thing. You've got to be able to figure out, how am I managing all the connections I have? Which are the ones that are really fruitful for me? Which ones do I really feel like are going to benefit, whether it's your job search or it's your work search, if you're going to be doing self-employed work. That's what I mean by networking chops. It's really important to kind of really put some strategy behind that and not just say, like, everybody link in with me. I don't want everybody to link in with me. I want the people who are most valuable to my goals and ambitions to link in with me, and I'm going to help them and they're going to help me. You also need, obviously, a sense of what's marketable about you. If you're not selling a product or you have a knowledge product, really understand who is going to buy that. Why is it valuable to them? We'll talk, and I know you've had, you guys have had some, you know, branding yourselves sessions in here. So all of that information that you're working toward setting yourself up as, you know, what your brand is and what's unique about you, that goes into how you sell yourself as a self-employed person. Before you become your own boss, you really need to consider the impact on any government benefits that you receive. When I teach entrepreneurship for New York City, a lot of my students in that class are receiving some kind of government benefits. Several have talked to me about the fact that they live in public housing, and there are income caps in order to continue to receive public housing and other types of benefits. So you really need to think about, how does this impact me? What's the impact on your taxes? If you're truly a 1099 employee worker, you have to really keep good records of the income you receive and the expenses, all of the expenses for your quote unquote office, you can deduct a lot of stuff. I just bought a new computer because I teach classes online this year, and my old computer is just not going to cut it with a Zoom. So that's a deductible expense for me. My computer is a deductible expense in addition to the paper and the toner and my internet connection and my website and all that stuff. What's the impact in the time and cost for startups? So if you're not already set up with a portfolio, if you're in the creative field, if you think like a website is going to be something that you need, developing a resume just for freelancing work. What about your social media profiles? I have a lot of clients who, they go back and forth about whether they should be using their personal social media profiles to post things from a business or self-employment standpoint. And some of them want to, and some of them create separate profiles for their business. So you have to figure that out. Continuing your job search, how's that time suck going to be once you start trying to get freelancing work or self-employed work? And then you have to deliver on the jobs that you successfully book. How is that going to impact your ability to continue your job search? And then, of course, like we all have family and other responsibilities. Oftentimes, self-employment creeps into, and you're your own boss. You don't work 9 to 5. I will be hands down honest with you. It's like 24/7. You got to be figuring out how to manage everything else in between. So that's an important consideration. I really like this because I have had many people tell me, like I've worked for myself for, I have my old boss who hires me. She's been on like 3 companies since we worked together, and she always brings me in on projects. And for a short time, she got laid off and was working for herself. And then she called me and said, hey, I want you to come in and take over for me in this project because I just got hired by this new company as an employee, and I don't want to leave this company I'm working for in the lurch. And I'm like, great, fine. We went out, took her out for dinner to thank her. And she's like, I applaud you because you've been doing this a long time. She goes, 6 months of working for myself, and I'm so happy to just be back on somebody else's payroll. It does not work for me. So it's really important to assess whether this is going to really work for you. If it's a short-term thing, great. Give yourself some, I'm going to try and only do this for 3 months or 6 months, and really make sure that you're working out a schedule so that you can continue on that job search journey without your freelancing or whatever you're pursuing on the self-employment side, really curtailing what you're able to accomplish for your job search. There are some obvious things on this list. We all are trying to get more comfortable with uncertainty these days. But there's a lot of uncertainty in kind of running your own business and being self-employed because you don't know, like, where's the next job coming from? Or maybe I've got jobs booked for a short term, but what happens next year? What happens when there's a pandemic and all of my clients suddenly have money problems? Or I'm dealing, I have one of my clients, her main source of income was from restaurant owners because she did like websites and menu design for restaurants. And all of a sudden that whole area obviously is dried up for her. And so she's got to go out and figure out, how do I take what I do and apply it to a new audience that has similar issues? So I can say, yeah, I solved these problems and I've achieved these results for my clients, and it actually is applicable and relevant to what you're struggling with. The other thing I really want to focus on is you need to be confident. That is something that I encounter, the lack of confidence in folks who run their own business, as well as in folks who are working for themselves all the time, especially when you're starting out. If you're not confident in what you can do and what you know and your expertise, how's anybody else going to be confident that you can help them and, confident in paying you for that? So practice, rehearse, if you have worked on an elevator pitch or a way to position yourself, don't be afraid of calling on friends and just saying, give me your honest feedback. What's working for me? What's not working for me? And obviously able to sell yourself, which works with the confidence thing. I want to stress that, don't be a salesperson. Like, don't be that smarmy kind of, we always think of the car salesman. Selling yourself is about being authentic. I work with a lot of business. All of my small business owners are female. They're women owned. They're women entrepreneurs. And a lot of the classes I teach for New York City are heavily female or all female. And being authentic, is really powerful. If you haven't figured that out already in your own experience, somebody that is genuinely themselves, who walks in the door and says, yeah, I'm not maybe having a great day, who's empathetic, you have to sell in the way that matches who you are. A lot of people who are introverted, I have a lot of clients who are kind of more introvert than extrovert. And I say, use that to your advantage. Introverts are incredibly powerful. They make incredibly powerful relationships. They cultivate, even if it's a smaller network, they cultivate that network much more deeply than a lot of people who are significantly more extroverted. So utilize that to your advantage. How to start, right? If you haven't already started, or you don't already have like a sense of this is what I'm going to be selling, or this is how I'm going to show up in the marketplace, define that for yourself. What is marketable about you? What's your expertise? What's your business idea? Research, I would put this as like 5 bullets: research, research, research. I know there's folks from all over the place in this Zoom. If you don't already have a literal library card with New York Public Library, or an e-card with New York Public Library, after the Zoom is over, go online, fill out that application. You do not have to be a New York City resident in order to get an e-card. And New York Public Library has one of the world's preeminent research libraries that's devoted to business development, employment, and scientific research. And because of COVID, a lot of the resources at that library that you would have to utilize physically going to the NYPL Science Business Industry Library, you can actually utilize from home. This is like amazing. There's so much stuff there. The library also runs sessions almost weekly on the different research tools that they have available to you, so that you know how to use them. You can also book a 30-minute session, I believe it's 30 minutes, with a research librarian to say, hey, I'm looking into starting a business in whatever, and I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to get market information, to get target audience information for women between 30 and 65 years old in the New York metropolitan area, in the Los Angeles area. I'm looking for information about, who else is, who's competing in this space. It's an amazing thing. So, like, run, don't walk to do this. Most small business owners I know don't even realize that this library exists, and they live in the city. So it's a hidden gem. Define your value proposition. You guys, again, you talked about, I know in a prior session, you talked about brand, personal branding and stuff like that. What makes you the better option for solving the problem, for helping your target audience to meet the challenge that your service or product is meeting for them, right? Why are you the better option? You have to be able to answer that question in a credible way. So pricing strategy is one of my favorite things to talk about. I'm not going to talk about it in real detail here, but I'm happy to answer questions about pricing strategy. Pricing is something that so many freelancers and independent contractors and businesses really don't do right. They either start too low, they don't understand there's actually different models and strategies to pricing, and they don't understand actually how to go in and understand how to price for profitability versus how to price competitively. So there's all different factors that impact price. But if you're going to start like an independent contracting, you're going to go out and sell your web skills, or your graphic design skills, or your content development skills, or what have you, social media marketing skills. It's important to understand what's the going rate, but it's also important to understand what you actually need to make, what you need to earn to pay yourself a living wage. And most people just sort of think, oh, I'm going to set this hourly rate, but they don't understand what they need to be factoring into that hourly rate in order to come out with the right number that's a salary for them, that's a payment for them, that they can live on. So do your homework and price yourself, and remember to charge your worth. If you need to set up a website, a portfolio, resume, like make sure you're factoring that into the time to market, the time it takes you to actually be a credible alternative for whoever you're targeting to sell to. So we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about networking because it's so important. You already have networks in place. Again, I recommend that you start to analyze who's in your network and what are the levels of your network. So there are, you know, if you think about it as concentric circles, right? There's my friends and my good friends and my family. These are people that are going to take my call no matter, you know, if I reach out to them, they're going to respond to me within the day, right? And then there's the next level. Those are people that I have a strong relationship with. They may not get back to me within 24 hours, but they're going to take my call. They're going to do me that favor. I can ask them a favor, right? That's my next. And then you kind of go out from there to more and more kind of acquaintance level. About 3 rings out, that's about as far as, again, like going back to that 190 whatever people, that's about as far out as you can really manage successfully. When you start to think about who can I draw in to help me do the things that I need to do, you want to start thinking about where are the people in that concentric ring diagram, right? And fill in your diagram. Say, here's all the people in my inner circle. Here's all the people in my second level circle. Here's all the people in my third level circle. Everybody else, I'm going to, you know, they'll come in and out, but these are that's your solid network. When you start out, there's going to be a lot of questions you have. You know, some of it may be about pricing. I've asked my trusted network folks, like, hey, you know, how much would you pay for this? I'm developing, you know, a course, or I'm developing, I'm writing a book, right? What's the maximum you would pay, right? At what point at the bottom end of the pricing scale do you feel like, you know, I don't trust the information in here because you're not charging enough? That's a really important question to ask. I asked one of my clients, don't just ask how much they're willing to pay, ask them if I charge, you know, and pick a number that's like lower on your scale and say, if I charge this much, what's the impression you have of the product I'm selling, right? She's selling handmade goods. And that'll help you say, like, I can't actually charge less than this. And it helps me understand, like, what's the baseline for just communicating quality in my pricing, right? Through my pricing. So recruit research participants, send out polls, ask people to participate, request advice, right? This kind of works hand in hand with asking for referrals. And, you know, while I said this was ask for referrals, what I really mean here is ask for what you need. Time and time again, I see people afraid to ask. They sort of like skirt around things. I went to this great networking session the other last week, and I really liked this woman said. She said, you should spend 60% of your networking time giving, being generous, right? Just giving, helping connect people, offering resources, maybe offering a free seminar. The other 40%, you should be cultivating reciprocity, right? Getting people to give you. And the best way to do that is to really ask for what you need from people. This is a hard thing for a lot of people to do. The first time I taught my my entrepreneur class for all women, I played this video I'd found on YouTube that was all these famous women business owners and talking about what it is to run a business as a woman. And I think it was Gail King that talked about never take no for an answer. I never take no for an answer. And while that is something that if you are a woman, you've probably heard that as advice in your career, some point or another, I know I've heard it more than once. And I decided I needed to flip that around because it's uncomfortable not to take to sort of pursue that as a strategy, right? I'm not a highly aggressive human being, and I don't really want to be bothering people and feeling like I'm bothering people. So I flipped it around for myself, and I decided instead of never taking no for an answer, I really need to make it easy for people to say yes when I ask them for something. And you know, that means if I'm asking for an introduction to somebody, I'm sending them the short 2 sentences that they can cut and paste or forward on to that connection that positions me in the right way for why I want to meet this person, right? It makes it easy. I tell all of my friends who constantly ask me to look at their resumes and, you know, can I help them? It's like, you know, you're making so much work for me. If you send me an email that says, here's what I'm looking for, here's how I can help this person, or here's what I need from this person, and positions yourself, then I can just cut it, paste it, do the introduction. That's 5 minutes of my time versus asking me to write an introduction for you to somebody, right? So make it easy for people to say yes. Ask for things that you're 90% sure this person is going to say yes to, that they can help you with, but also give them the tools and information they need to make it easy for them. So it's a 5-minute thing that you're imposing for 5 minutes of their time versus 15, 20, half an hour. I gotta do this when I'm not like inundated with all this other stuff because I need to think about it. One of the best ways, Ken and I talked about how we met on Lunch Club, right? One of the most important things is to explore partnerships when you're, especially if you are a solopreneur, if you are out there on your own. You know, I've partnered with designers because I'm a content development person. I used to be in a strategic partnership with a friend of mine who was like a creative director, videographer. We did hundreds of thousands of dollars in business because we teamed up together. Because she was like, I can't write proposals, and I'm not a strategic person. I can come in with great creative ideas. I can manage the creative team, but I can't really work in healthcare and translate complex healthcare stuff into simple patient-focused content. That's where I came in, right? So find somebody who does something you don't do that seems like a natural fit, and see if you can explore opportunities to expand your audience for the skills that you have. That's a great way to use networking. So where to start? The last couple of slides are all these resources. You probably know about a bunch of them if you're already doing, if you're already self-employed. A bunch of these here for just like freelancing, independent contracting kind of stuff are, you know, some are creative, some are more general, some are outplacement. So you're actually going to be on a W-2 for them. And don't forget to look on job boards wherever you're looking for jobs. And looking at what's available from a freelance standpoint, what's available on a consulting level, what's available temp work. Do it both in the filters that they have as well as in the search terms. And all of these are linked. So whatever's underlined is linked. So you can go and click on it when you get the PDF. For small business, again, I'm in the New York City area, so there's a lot of resources here for New York City, New York State. But if you are not in the city or state that I am in, go onto your local state and city government sites and see what resources and programs are available for small business. Even if you are a sole proprietor, even if you're going to be freelancing, you can still be a small business and take advantage of a lot of those resources. Let's talk a little bit about what's on here. The Small Business Administration has a lot of programs that can help you build business depending on different factors. So if you live in what is defined as an economically disadvantaged zone or area, you may have access to being in certain business development programs versus someone like me who does not live in one of those zones. Think Big, Start Small is a great nonprofit organization. Right now they're doing a lot of free programs for small business, but generally speaking, you can utilize their services if you qualify. based on various income and other factors. And they provide things like free business, free legal advice, free accounting support, things like that. Hello Alice has a lot of resources on there. You can get in discussion boards. They do a mentoring program. Their focus is particularly on women and minority business owners and freelancers. SCORE is, I don't remember what it stands for, but it's retired business owners who donate their time as mentors to business owners now. So you can go on their list and find people who have done all kinds of things. You can set up a mentoring session and get some advice. Small Business Development Centers, SBDC, they're all over the country. This is a link so you can find the one near you. I know in New York City, they're associated with a lot of different universities. So Columbia, Baruch, Pace, I think each have them, and then probably in the boroughs. I'm not sure exactly where they are. PTAC is I'm not going to remember what it is. A procurement technical assistance center. I think that's what that stands for. That is particularly if you're interested in government contracting, or you're interested in being certified as a woman or minority or service veteran disabled business. They can help you with that. Fast Track is the program that I teach for New York City. This is a link to the Fast Track program. You do not have to live in New York City to take this class. I've had students who live in Connecticut, New Jersey, Long Island, Westchester. I think I had a student from Pennsylvania. I'm not sure how far they're willing to take students. It's all virtual now, so maybe they've opened it up. But Fast Track actually is a program that is licensed and offered in various places around the country. So if you are in the Midwest or out West, check and see if they're offering Fast Track near you. WeBo, again, I don't remember what it stands for. It is another free business development program. There are WeBo affiliates all over the country. Find the one near you, and that's another great program. We NYC is for women entrepreneurs in New York City. Again, because everything is virtual, even if you don't live in New York City, you can sign up and take advantage of their programming. They do sessions on finance, business finance, and funding, networking. I don't know, they have like 3 different tracks. The VA, if you are a veteran, has a small business development area on the website, and a lot of programs for veterans opening small business. And then wherever you are, check your minority women business owners office and see, are there certification programs near you? Are there events near you? All of that stuff. You don't necessarily have to be certified to show up and learn something. That's what I have for you guys. Again, I really appreciate you spending some time with me. I'm happy to answer questions. And Kenneth, I don't know if any questions have come in, but I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Oh, I don't see any questions now, but it was a really great presentation. Thank you very much. And I hope everyone got something out of it. So looking at the chat here, don't see any questions.
You're welcome to ask me about anything. You want to ask me about
you can unmute yourself if need be. I see some questions.
Hey, Lauren, this is Anupama. I did join in late, but I loved the best slide I loved is self-employment is not for everyone because you don't like your boss. Because I have heard that, and I myself, I'm a working mother. I had tried being a stay-at-home mother and it was not for me. So I know what it is to try something, and it doesn't mean you're not a good mother. It's just I'm a better working mother than a stay-at-home mother.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. It's not for you, you know, and that's an important thing to know, right? My sister-in-law runs her own business. It's a creative play for children. My brother's an actor, so he's a gig worker. And what she did, because they have a young child, is she rented office space outside of her home because she found she was much more productive. She didn't always work there, but for her, she needed that in order to sort of get away from they live in Brooklyn in a small apartment. So for some people who want to do it, but their home environment isn't quite right, I've known a lot of freelancers who just pick a place to go so that they have X number of hours away from the demands of their household to do it. It's harder to do with COVID. But I've seen these, an article that I was reading in the New York Times is about these portable offices that people are buying for their homes to actually put in a space in their home so that they can kind of have this insulated space that nobody is supposed to, go in there other than them. And companies were using this. Their big clients were companies who had these open workspaces, and people found they needed a space to work privately, so if it's something that you want to do, people find a way to do it. But absolutely, when you have other people living in your household, I don't have anybody else living in my household, so I can have my home office and nobody's going to bother me other than the construction that happens almost daily in New York City.
Right. And it could change. Now my kids are older and I'm an entrepreneur and I work for myself and I love my boss.
So Lauren, there was a question in there. At what point do you need to consider an LLC? If you're just going to do one assignment and maybe that's it, or is there a tipping point?
It really depends. If you're just if this is a stopgap between, in order for you to earn some income until you find a job, I don't recommend it. It's not worth the expense. The biggest thing to understand, especially, if you're in a service industry, is to understand that it may be worthwhile to get some business insurance just to cover, like I have professional liability insurance to cover errors and omissions. So if I make a big mistake that costs my client or their client money and somebody wants to sue me, I have insurance versus, necessarily having a corporate structure that's going to protect my retirement and, any other assets I own. To me, that's the better, it's not that expensive. It's a couple $100 to get, basic professional liability insurance. And again, it depends on what it is you're selling, like what you're doing, how much risk there is.
I think when you also think about how much you're going to charge, think about how much time you need to spend to get something together. It's not the actual time you may be meeting with the client. If you have to do some preparation, if you have to do some advanced work, that's your time too, just to factor that in.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. One of the things that people do not do is they don't factor in how much taxes you're going to have to pay. So if you just take your hourly rate, 1 hour of your time, right? And you break that out into what are you paying, right? You're paying, maybe that's $15, $20, $100 an hour, $15, $20 are going to the government right off the top. You got to set that aside for the government, right? And then you've got to pay yourself back for the hours in which it took you to make that sale. So if it took you 2 hours, you got to kind of repay a portion of those 2 hours for each hour you work. And a portion of that is going to go to the government, right? So it's complicated. You got to pay a portion of your operating expenses, whatever the printer, paper, if you have a website, all the expenses that go into just running your freelance. So you end up with much less than you think you need. And when people start to factor in like, okay, if I make $100 an hour and I need $4,000 a month, then I need to work 40 hours a month. And it's really like, no, you probably need to work closer to 60 hours a month.
Suggest people accept payment. I mean, besides possibly mailing a check, do you suggest creating a PayPal account or Venmo, or what are some of the ways that besides the old checks or direct deposits that people are accepting now?
All of those. I mean, you can also utilize a free accounting service like Wave that, just like PayPal, they will enable you to accept credit card payments. They'll take a percentage off the top like PayPal does, but it goes right into your bank account. I've utilized that for some products that I sell. That's worked well for me. you want to kind of shop around. I mean, there's Squares, you know, Square, right? I keep confusing Square and Squarespace, but Square, and other types of payments like that can do it. You want to find the one that's going to take the least amount of money from you, basically. And then you can also, if you're working with different types of companies, so not so much individuals, but companies, a lot of my clients these days, particularly my consulting clients, pay direct deposit.
I would also suggest, and I think this came up last week, if you have a website, put up a disclaimer or some type of terms and conditions there just to protect yourself. It doesn't have to be anything major. There's a lot of boilerplate things out there. Again, it's another thing to do, and it's not hard to do. I mean, LinkedIn, we all have to deal with their terms and conditions, and it's the same sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you can use boilerplate, or it depends what you sell. So I don't want to say that boilerplate is going to be good enough for everybody. It's really valuable to talk to a lawyer if you're selling any kind of products. And if you are selling services, you should have legal language in the contracts that you are, you know, you don't just, you know, write something yourself. I mean, I've written things myself. I've worked for lawyers, so I generally know how those contracts go. But for the most part, I go out and I get a boilerplate contract from a lawyer that I pay once for, and then it's just plug in the information that's relevant to each job.
I definitely think you want it in your contract. If you have a contract, have a stipulation like Nancy Steinberg said, when you're going to get paid, how much time they have, what's the follow-up. I mean,
here's what I recommend to everybody. One, get payment up front for a portion of what, if you're a service provider, for a portion of the service you're providing. That one means your client is going to be committed to moving that project forward because they've already invested some money in it, right? Two, when you, like I used to do scopes of work for when I worked as an employee of a consulting company, and they were big, long things. My scopes of work are 2 pages, very simple. Nobody wants to read. So it's, here's what's going to happen. We're going to do these blah, blah, blah things. This is what you're responsible for. Here's the deliverables. Every deliverable is connected to a payment, an invoice I'm going to send you. So you are paying me as I move through that service contract with you. You are paying me at every single point that I deliver anything, even if it's the draft of this report that is whatever. I'm issuing an invoice so that by the time we get to the end and it's like final sign off, you owe me $200 versus the $7,500 that the contract is for. Have the least amount of money on the table for that final sign off, because that's often, I've worked in big companies, little companies, right? That final sign off, maybe that's going to go to committee. Oh, our CEO has to look at it. There's always something. So, you know, I want you to have, listen, I've already made my $7,300 out of this. If I lose $200 or I have to wait 6 months for $200, that's not going to break me. But if I'm leaving $5,000 on the table, or, you know, the whole thing or half the thing, that's a lot more painful. So stipulate in your thing, here's my 5 deliverables. For each deliverable, there is a payment. In addition, get some money up front.
Well, I know I found.
And I agree, in your payment terms, you should always say there's a penalty. You have 30 days to pay from the date of the invoice. What I started to do about 2 years ago that's gotten me paid faster is I do not put a 30-day due date. I put due today, right? It's due today. You have 30 days from that date to pay it, but I know it's due today, and send a reminder. You can automate. Again, if you use something like Wave or use any kind of accounting system, they should have an invoice generator in there, and they should be able to automatically send reminders out to whoever you are sending to your clients that says, hey, 15 days until this is overdue, right? 7 days till this is overdue. That has helped me get paid. I think I had one client who it took their accounting system like 2 weeks to pay me. So it arrived like 2 days late, and I'm like, that's fine. But I haven't been paid late in a couple of years now by anybody.
So for anyone whose questions were not answered, Lauren, will you be able to take them after the call or just through a message?
Yeah, send me a message right now. My email, if you were here at the beginning, my email is kind of wonky today. So you are welcome to send me a message in LinkedIn, or you can, maybe wait a day, and you've got my Lauren at easilysaidandDone.com. That's my email address. So you're welcome to ping me and just remind me that you were in this session and you have a question.
And you'll share the presentation with me, and I'll make sure that
I'm going to send it to you now after we get off the line. Okay. Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Lauren. It was really great and really helpful. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
And where do you share the presentation from?
I'm going to get the presentation. What I will do is I will put it on in the meetup group, and if anyone needs it after that and they don't get it, they just email me or just send me a message on LinkedIn.
Okay, thank you.